There. Okay, I'm Kristen Hagan. I'm the Associate Director here at the Center for Global Engagement. This is a really unusual fall orientation for us, and I'm sure it's not what any of you were expecting. We had hoped to greet you in our big auditorium to let you get to really know each other, but we appreciate your coming to join us all today. We appreciate all your flexibility, your energy, and your enthusiasm, and we hope everyone can learn how to do that virtually. For the few of you who are in Tallahassee, we hope we can meet you sometime sooner rather than in the spring. What we're going to go over today are the introductions. We're going to tell you about the Center for Global Engagement and some programming that you can participate in at FSU. We'll tell you a little bit about living in Tallahassee and what you have to look forward to if you're not here. We're going to talk about cybersecurity because that's been an important topic, and especially with everybody studying remotely, it's very relevant. Safety in the U.S., healthcare in the U.S. Even though you may not be here using our system, it's really important to know a lot of these things, and you'll have a lot more time to think about it since you won't be arriving till spring. Let's see, FSU academic resources and success. We're going to talk about F1 immigration advising, and we know that you don't hold F1 status unless you're currently in the US, but there are rules that you should know. And at the end, I had told our group, but we'll go back to the breakout rooms where you can ask more questions. I also want to take this minute to remind everybody, if you have not filled out the travel enrollment plans form that's in Null Start, we'd appreciate your doing that. That helps us know who is where and if we need to issue a new I-20 for you with a spring start date. There's lots of things we've learned from that form, so thank you. These are the advisors in our International Student and Scholar Services section of our office. You'll meet some of them later as they present today. We have other CGE staff because we're a comprehensive office that do more than just international student advising. We also have intercultural programs. We have a couple of faculty members who do intercultural classes. And then we have some other special programs. So there's a lot of staff to support all of you. This is what's always exciting, and we love it when you're in a big physical room, but now we're doing it virtually. If you just take a look at the countries on this, you come from all over. We appreciate your taking the time, the evening, early in the morning to join us. If we forgot anybody, can you please type it into the chat so Laura can recognize you? But you can see it's a diverse group. At FSU, there are students from over 150 different countries. So that's one of the fun aspects of studying abroad, is that you're able to meet people not only from the US, but from all over the world. I'm going to turn this back over to Laura now, and she can tell you more about programs. But welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here.
All right, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Like I mentioned, my name is Laura Dean. I am the Intercultural CGE Programs Coordinator, so I'll be doing all of the fun events, all of them virtually this semester, but regardless, we'll have a good time together. I did want to at least acknowledge, thank you, Corrine, for sending me a message. We did miss Haiti in that list, so just wanted to give a shout out to Haiti. And so for my part of the presentation, I'm just going to go over some of the many programs that we will offer, as well as FSU in general, for ways you can participate, engage with one another, and really connect to campus resources. Oh, and sorry, Mohammed just emailed or message saying Saudi Arabia as well was missed. So Haiti and Saudi Arabia, shout out to you all. All right, so in terms of CGE's virtual events, we have, as I said, many that we will be hosting throughout the semester. And these are just some of the ones that are continuous throughout the semester that you can always expect to participate in. So we have English Conversation Club for those of you that would like to practice your conversational English in a fun, relaxed, comfortable environment. We will be holding those virtually every weekday from 4 to 5 p.m. And we will also hold a Tuesday, Thursday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. slot. For those of you that are in different time zones, and 4 to 5 p.m. is just the middle of the night. For those of you that would also like to meditate collectively, we do a meditation Mondays from 12 to 1, and that's just a 20-minute guided meditation by one of our CGE staff members, and then an opportunity for us all to connect with each other. And then finally, our signature program is International Coffee Hour. It's held every Friday, 5 to 6:30 virtually. And it's an opportunity for us to all gather together, learn about a particular country or culture. There's a cooking demonstration as a part of it, and then breakout room conversations. For this week, what I'll do is, for all of you that are joining us, I will send you the Zoom meeting link for coffee hours so that you have the opportunity, if you would like, to participate. And if not, if in the future you would like to, we have a registration form that I will also provide to you after orientation. In terms of connecting with our events generally, please do visit cge.fsu.edu/connect, and that's all of the ways in which we've transitioned our services and events virtually. And there's also other Welcome FSU, larger FSU campus events that are happening around campus. I will say too, we will be sending out more information of different workshops that we'll be holding for you all. We have various ones that we're collaborating with Counseling Center, Career Center, FSU PD, all of these different services, which is the police department, all of these different services that you might not otherwise be aware of or want to learn more about. So once those are confirmed in terms of dates and times, we will send an email out to you. You will have the opportunity to participate. And of course, for when we're open back in person, and I'm hoping that's soon enough for you all to be able to participate in in-person events, these are just some of the many different things that we do as part of the Center for Global Engagement's events. So as I mentioned, FSU as a whole, as a campus, does a lot to welcome students. So starting as of today until the 27th, there are plenty of virtual and in-person, some in-person events as well that are available. So I highly recommend that you visit welcome.fsu.edu to see all of the options out there for you to engage with students, learn more about campus, and really just have a good time as you transition to your degree here. In terms of overall events throughout the semester, campus will be holding this virtual FSU space. So anytime there are any other updated events outside of Welcome FSU events, meaning these are going to go throughout the rest of the semester, I would highly recommend visiting this website as it will always update you with every single event possible on campus that you can attend. And always, in order to stay connected with us, we highly recommend that you join our weekly newsletter. For those of you that are new students, you'll automatically be joined to that newsletter, but it's good enough to know that those do show up every week in your inbox. And I know emails sometimes are difficult to keep up with, but that's a good one to keep up with. It has all of our events for that week. Anything and important information that you need to know regarding CGE will be in that newsletter, and sort of updates and check-ins with you all. But for those of you that are social media people, we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We highly recommend that you follow us. It's at FSU CGE is our handle, and those are the ways that you can connect. As always, though, you can feel free to email me at any point if you have an idea for a program or would like to learn more about how to engage in programming. I'm always available. So lovely to see you all. Happy to have you here. Welcome to FSU, and I'm going to transition to Quinn.
Hi, everyone. So orientation is like my favorite time of year, just because for the most part, I get to meet everybody that I've been working with for like the past 6 months. So again, nice to see you all, even if it is virtually. So I'm going to be talking about living in Tallahassee. I've been in Tallahassee for about 12 years now. I did my undergraduate here. I did my graduate program here. So normally I talk about all the fun activities you can do with lots of people, but I'm going to be talking about just kind of things that you can do once you arrive, and just with kind of the social distancing ideas in mind. So here we go. So just to let you know, almost everything that I'm going to be showing you today is likely to be significantly impacted by COVID-19. We're always going to encourage strong social distancing procedures and just kind of the other CDC protocols to ensure your public health. You're absolutely going to be getting updates from FSU and from the city of Tallahassee. And just kind of keep in mind that this is just kind of meant to show you some of what Tallahassee has to offer. This is by no means an exhaustive list of everything that you can do here. One of the first things that we're going to recommend you do, if you haven't already, is download the MYFSU app. It should be available on whatever phone you have. It's very, very useful just for everything. It has updates, it has your academics, finances, holds, pretty much anything relating to your FSU account you can find on your MYFSU app. There's also something that was just released, which is called the Daily Wellness Check. It's a part of a way that you can kind of track your own health. You can notify the university if there is anything that comes up that we need to be aware of. And if you're going to be employed at FSU, it's also a way of kind of tracking everything that's going on within your department and within where you work. So I do recommend that you take a look at that and that you should try to go ahead and download that as soon as possible. Seminole dining, we have been getting kind of new updates about where you're going to be able to eat on campus. All the places that were previously open should still be open. There's just probably going to be different procedures in place. But you can go to Seminole Dining, or which is this website down at the bottom, to kind of see what your options are on campus, see what the menus are going to be. I know that for a lot of you, this is going to be something that's going to be for a future semester. But if you do happen to be on campus this fall, you're going to be able to use this website to kind of track to see where food is and what you can get each day. So I definitely recommend that you give it a try. So one thing that you should also do if you're already in Tallahassee is check out the transportation apps that are listed here and review the bus sites. So there are two fairly excellent bus systems in Tallahassee, both for Tallahassee City and for FSU. Chances are, if you do live in one of the major apartment complexes in Tallahassee, you're very close to a Star Metro bus stop. So that's why we do recommend that you take a look at the website. You can kind of compare where you are to where your bus stop is, and then you can get an idea about what the route is going to be and what your schedule might be each day if you are relying on a bus to get you to where you're going. So I do recommend you check out the Translock system, which is a bus tracker, and then the trip planner, which is at talgov.com. And both of these are excellent resources to kind of plan out your daily schedule if you are going to be relying on public transportation. If you're going to be parking, one of the first things that you're going to want to do if you do have a car while you're in Tallahassee is get your FSU parking sticker. It's actually a digital sticker, so it's nothing that actually goes on your car, but you do need to register your car so that you can park in the appropriate spaces on campus. An easy way to remember it is that if it is a white parking space, you can park there at any time. If it is a red parking space, you're usually only allowed to park there after your business hours. And then there are special spots for if you have a motorcycle or if you are going to be using disability parking services. So this is built in to your tuition and fees. So if you have a car, it's something that you're kind of paying for anyway. So make sure that you do go ahead and get that parking pass as soon as possible. So this one is a little bit more complicated. You're going to need an American bank account while you're in the United States. Typically, this is something where you can just walk into the bank and open up your account with the appropriate information. However, right now, we do recommend that you contact the bank ahead of time to try to make an appointment to open your account. We've seen some increased wait times due to COVID-19, and we've actually seen situations where banks actually aren't allowing people to just walk in. They're only allowed to enter if they have an appointment. So these are kind of like the big three banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and SunTrust. There is a SunTrust on campus, and there's multiple banks all around Tallahassee. There's quite a few of them. So you're not going to be having a hard time finding a bank. It really is just going to be up to you which one you want to choose. When you do go, just make sure that you bring multiple forms of identification, including your immigration documents and passport, and make sure that you have an amount that you can bring with you to deposit. When you do go to the bank, just make sure that you ask them about fees, transfers, things of that nature. And again, I highly encourage you to reach out to the bank ahead of time rather than just trying to show up to one. Now, one thing that you can definitely do in Tallahassee right now is enjoy the outdoors. So it is the end of summer here, which means it is quite warm outside. But it's one of those things where there's quite a few things that you can do outside that are just going to be a really good time. You can go through Campus Rec and do all kinds of outdoor pursuits. There's tons of trails and parks in Tallahassee. You can get a bike through the Recycle Bike program. You can go to the res, which we'll talk about in a minute, to take a sailing class. There really are a lot of awesome things you can do in Tallahassee right now that are outdoors. And because they're outdoors, they're social distance friendly, and they're friendly to the whole kind of social distancing and health requirements. So I do recommend that you kind of take a look at some of these websites, and you can always email us. Like, I know that any of our advisors would be happy to tell you where our favorite places to go are. I'm about to show you one of my favorite parks here in just a second, so don't hesitate to reach out. So this is just an example of one of the places you can go. It's called ALFORD Greenway. It's also called Lafayette Trail. It's a combination of like a park and a hiking trail. It's perfect for hiking, dog walking, and just hanging out. It's about a 4-mile trail. There's a great lake for you to walk around. It's very, very pretty. And for some reason, it's very, very secluded. Like, even though it's not very far away, almost nobody goes out there. So compared to some of the bigger parks, it's usually pretty empty. So it's less crowded. It's a really great trail. There's lots of shade. So it's one of the places that you can go. That's just an example of kind of the cooler places to go in Tally. I always include this one because it's probably one of my favorite Florida activities. It's exactly what it sounds like. You hop in an inner tube or a kayak and you float down a river for about 4 miles. It's amazing. It takes a couple of hours. You don't have to worry about swimming. You don't have to worry about anything. You just kind of sit there, relax, listen to music. You're in a spring river, so the water is always going to be 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So especially right now when it's 90+ degrees Fahrenheit, it's incredibly relaxing, and it's very cool water. It's perfect for summer, and it's very, very relaxing, which we all kind of need in times like this. So I can't really recommend this enough. You should definitely give it a try. One of the coolest things that FSU has in general is something called the FSU Reservation. Everybody just calls it the Res. It is a massive lakefront property that is completely free to FSU students. It has everything from canoeing and kayaking to disc golf, volleyball, soccer, pretty much anything you can think of outdoors. You can do it at the Res. There's always going to be group activities that are organized year-long through Campus Rec, but it's also one of those things where you can just get a group of friends and go out there yourself. It is going to be open this fall, but you should definitely check out the Campus Rec website ahead of time just to kind of see if there are going to be any attendance locks or any kind of like limits on the number of people who are allowed in per day. Because if that is the case, you're going to want to get there early. There are buses out to the Res. There's also, it's pretty close. It's not very far. So if you have a car or if you have a friend with a car, definitely check it out. It's one of the best things you can do. So athletics is a little complicated right now. Just in general, you should know that FSU is classified as a Division I program. So among all of the universities, this essentially means that all of our teams are going to be competing at the highest possible level of competitive collegiate athletics. Within that division, we're within a conference, which is known as the ACC. This is one of the Power 5 conferences. So this means that we play against other teams in our conference. And when we're playing against those other teams, they tend to be the best of the best. So because of that, when you can, you should definitely go to some of our sporting events. You're always going to see a good show. You're always going to see really high quality athletic entertainment. And almost every event is free, save for like certain championships. So like if we make it into a championship, which may or may not be happening this fall, those you generally have to pay for, but for the most part, everything is going to be free. One thing to note is that as a university, we're actually still evaluating how COVID-19 will impact our athletic events, both in terms of whether or not athletes will be participating and whether or not students can go to those events. You should assume for the time being that attendance is going to be severely restricted. I know for a fact that a lot of the fall sports are actually still determining whether or not they can even play. So that's one of those things to kind of keep an eye on. There's definitely going to be announcements from the university when major decisions are made, but it's one of those things where you may not be able to enjoy this right away, but once you can go to a game, I do recommend that you do so. And this is an example of some of the many sports that we have. We have our women's softball team, which just won a national championship. We have our women's soccer team, who's won multiple championships since I've been here. We've got our basketball team, which in my opinion would have won the championship this year until everything was canceled. Our baseball team is one of the best in the country and consistently has been. Our football team is in a bit of a downturn, but they're still amazing. So you should definitely go to one of those. Pretty much anything that can be done as a sport can be done well at FSU. So I do recommend that when you get a chance, you go out and just try to see a few games. There are also a ton of different FSU club organizations that puts on everything from concerts to comedy skits on campus. These, again, are likely going to be impacted by COVID just because large groups of people performing together and large groups of people in an audience together doesn't exactly satisfy social distancing. But it is one of those things where once these start to resume, I can't encourage you enough to go out and see them. You can try out for them. So if you're musically inclined or if you want to perform in theater, you can always try it yourself. There's tons of different groups you can choose from. So keep an eye on those when they do start to resume, and it's free entertainment. So this, out of everything, is my favorite thing on campus. So I think there's one other collegiate circus in like Iowa, and theirs is terrible compared to ours. Ours is amazing. You absolutely need to go to the FSU circus when it reopens. The Halloween show is like one of the best things you can go and see. It's all run completely by students. It's a legitimate circus. There's trapeze, there's death-defying stunts. There's usually something on fire. There's no animals, but you know, that's more of a choice. There's amazing junk food. So anything that you can think of at a circus, they're gonna have there. Again, this is something that's definitely going to be impacted by COVID, but whenever these resume, it's one thing that if you're gonna choose one thing to do that's like unique to FSU, you should go to the circus because you're not gonna regret it, especially the Halloween show if it happens. All right. Tallahassee events. So again, this is hugely impacted at the moment. As you can see, almost every picture on here is not something that would be appropriate right now. But once these events resume, you're gonna wanna go to visit Tallahassee.com. Right now, I'll actually show you what the changes have been. But usually there's things like First Friday, tons of cultural events. We've got the Winter Garden down below. It's a really, really awesome series of events that happen year round. And I know that the city of Tallahassee is pretty committed to kind of updating those events with social distancing in mind. So it's one of those things to kind of keep an eye on because eventually you will be able to attend these. With that in mind, Tallahassee has actually updated their website and updated their experiences page to have a series of virtual experiences. So if you go to the virtual experiences website, it's a full list of activities and experiences that can be done from home. So it's everything from going to a museum and walking through it virtually to concerts, free movies, things of that nature. So it's one of those things where if you can't really get out and enjoy it with people in the real world, you can enjoy it from your living room. So it is one of those things where once you get here and you're just trying to see what you can do, check out Virtual Tallahassee and just see if there's anything there that interests you. I saw that there was a question about soccer. Just to let everybody know, there are certain sports at FSU that you might only see represented by one group. That's because of something called Title IX. So universities are only allowed to have a certain number of sports and they have to be balanced. So we have a women's soccer team, but we actually don't have a men's soccer team. That's because we have a different amount of other men's teams. So as a result, there are going to be some teams that are club teams or some teams that are not officially within the university's competitive teams. It's a little bit complicated, but just realize that if you go to FSU Athletics, you'll be able to see a full list of all of the sports teams. And even if there's ones that aren't officially competing for the university, there's a ton of club teams. For example, our FSU men's lacrosse team isn't technically a university team, but it is a club team that is affiliated with the university and wears our colors and our symbols when they play. So check out FSU Athletics and you'll get a chance to see all of the sports that are offered here. But with that, I think that wraps up mine. So I believe Phil Kramer is going to take over and he's going to talk to you a little bit about cybersecurity.
All right, good morning. My name is Phil Kramer and I'm the Information Security Privacy Office Security Training Coordinator from Information Technology Services. Today we're going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity and some things that you would need to be aware of to make sure that you remain safe and vigilant while you're here at FSU. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about phishing. So what is phishing? We've all seen these phishing emails. They're emails, not only emails, but it could be a website, it could be a phone call, it could be a text that is designed to steal your information. And they can do this through sending you an email with a link that you click and ask you to log in with your username or password, or they could be mimicking your bank and want to know your account information, or you could click on the email and it could install some malicious software on your machine, and then it's going to ask you for your personal information. We need to be very careful about the emails that you receive, and we'll give you some examples of why and what you need to do if you feel like you have received one of these emails. So there's a couple different types of phishing attacks we're going to talk about next. So let's talk about voice phishing. And the reason we bring this up is that there have been instances that international students have been called on the phone and told that it's the FBI or that it's the immigration department, and that if you don't pay us so much money, we are going to revoke your visa and you'll be kicked out of the country. So obviously this causes a bit of consternation for individuals that receive these calls. If you receive a call of this nature, just say thank you and hang up, and contact one of your points of contact at the Center for Global Engagement and let them know you received that, and we can work with you to make sure we file a report about it. Because the bottom line is that the FBI or INS is not going to call you on the phone and ask you for money. So that's a big kicker. If you get a call like that, you need to know that this is not legitimate. And unfortunately, we've had people think it was legitimate and actually send them money, which was not necessary, and it was not a legitimate call. So we call this phishing. So it's voice phishing. So it's when they call you on the phone and try to get your personal information. And it cannot only be trying to get you to pay just because your visa is lapsed. It could be that they're offering you a cruise and they would just want you to give them your credit card information and pay the handling fee. A lot of times you'll get those calls. Hey, you've been selected and you've won a trip for 2 to the Bahamas. We just need your credit card. So this is another attempt to gain your personal information. Some of the phrases that are commonly associated with these phone calls are, you've committed a crime and will be arrested unless whatever they're asking you to do. You will be deported from the US unless, you may lose your legal status unless, don't hang up the phone or you'll be in trouble. So they're trying to threaten you and make you very nervous. You owe taxes and need to pay now. The IRS, if you are filing taxes in the United States, they'll never call you to tell you to pay your taxes. A lot of times they'll say, you trust me, right? And that's kind of one of those hit catchphrases to try to put you at ease. And then all you have to do is pay shipping, just like I had mentioned before. Okay, Kevin, next slide. Social engineering is a type of phishing attack too, where they're using deception to make you give them your personal information that they're going to use for fraudulent purposes. Everything that they need, a cyber criminal needs to fool you into thinking that the message or email is legitimate, is coming from someone you know. So they'll do this through an email that looks very familiar. It may be on a FSU standard template that you've seen emails, but they're spoofing that email address and they're gathering information. Just remember, the bottom line is the FSU IT office, no one's going to ask you through email, or they're not going to call you to ask you for your login information, your password, your user ID. If you need to reset your password, this is something that you will do on your own. They're not going to call you and tell you to do it. Also, social engineering is done through looking at your social media. They can find your name, date of birth, location, workplace, your hobbies, what kind of relationship status, maybe your email address is on there. What kind of food do you like? So if you put on there all that information, they can start building a profile about you and maybe be able to track you when they see perhaps your favorite food is Indian food, and then there's only a couple Indian restaurants in Tallahassee, so they start going to these restaurants to see if you're there, or you're posting pictures, I'm eating my favorite food. So just be careful what you post on social media. It'll limit you getting socially engineered by somebody that's trying to perhaps do something to damage your identity. Next slide, please. Spear phishing, this is a type of phishing attack. This is when emails are sent from a known sender in order to trick individuals into giving confidential information, which is basically phishing in a nutshell. So they may gather the personal information about your targets to increase their ability to succeed in getting information. So it may be very personal, and they may know things about you in the email, so it looks like it may be legitimate. And the fast fact is that these type of attacks, spear phishing, account for 91% of the phishing attacks, and it is the most successful form of phishing on the internet today. Now, we do here at FSU have a software on our email server that we use to try to gather all these phishing emails before they get to you. Now, they have gotten pretty good, so some of them do slip through. So just be wary. If you feel like it's fishy, don't take any action. Just get with the supervisor or get with somebody at CGE, or you can contact us at the Information Security Privacy Office. We do have an email address called abuse@fsu.edu that you can send these emails to, and we will analyze them to see if they're legitimate or not. You can always reach out to me. After this orientation last week, one of the students that was on the orientation actually got an email that he thought may be fishy, and he actually sent it to me to check on it. It turned out it was legitimate, but sometimes just the way some of the emails are written, they don't look like they're legitimate. So it's always better to err on the side of caution and find out first. Not doing something immediately is not going to hurt you, but if you do think it's not a legitimate email, let us know, and we'll let you know right away. Next slide, please. Clone phishing. So this is what I was talking about when you see an email that looks very familiar to you because it may be on a template that CGE has sent you an email on. But what they've done is the link, perhaps they want you to go and fill out a survey or something, but what they've done is they've replaced that link. It may look like it's going to an FSU email address, but they've put in a subdomain, a domain in there that is going outside of FSU. So even though everything looks good, it may be a nefarious email. So you need to practice hovering over the links or just not taking action and finding out from CGE, did you send me an email? Because sometimes it looks too good to be true, and it usually is. So it's sent to the same recipient address as the original original message. So if you look up in the top, it's going to and coming from the same person. That's kind of a kickoff that, hey, something may not be right with this. Or it's sent from an email address that may be spoofed. So it may look like it's coming from Kevin Galatera, but it's not. So always err on the side of caution and ask before you take any action, because we certainly don't want you to give up your credentials or give up any personal information that you don't need to, or perhaps give up your banking information and or have to pay money to people. And this is a link manipulation. This is what I was talking about when they go and the link they put into these emails. It looks like it's a good link. There may be a fsu.edu in there, but it may say fsu.lt.edu. So if you know in computers and how web links work, the first, after FSU, it's going to the .lt, so it's going to that domain. It's not going to the .edu. So you want to make sure you very carefully analyze what the link is in the email. We always pretty much say don't click links, just to be a safe practice. Always ask the person that sent the email if you know them, did you send me something in a link? Or check with somebody before you click it. Misspelled URLs may be in the link, a subdomain like I just said. So we try to get you to hover over that link. If you hover over it, it'll actually show you where it's actually going. So they'll put the link there that it might say its.fsu.edu. So you think, oh, I'm going to the FSU website or IT technology website of FSU. But when you hover over that link, it's going to somewhere else. So you need to verify that that link is legitimate. All right, next slide, Kevin. All right, so how are we going to protect ourselves from phishing? So FSU will never ask you for your password over email, like I just said. IRS will never call you and ask you for any of your information. INS, FBI, the police department. So just make sure if someone's calling you or emailing you, asking you for personal information, it's most likely for not a legitimate purpose. So always just say okay and then hang up, or I'll get back with you, whatever you want to say. Or if they start asking you, you can just hang up. And it's always nice, let us know if you get a call like this so we can check and see if this is something that's common, because a lot of the things we do with these emails that come in, we look for patterns. And if it's an email that I keep seeing and it's reported to the abuse box, we do post it on our ITS website. We have what we call a fish tank, and that's where you can go and you'll see the phishing emails that we've received that have been reported to us that seem to be looking for your credentials or personal information. Here are some tips to protect yourself. Any email you get that asks for your password, just delete it. It's not legitimate. You know that right away. Don't send your passwords, bank accounts through email or through text for that matter, or through a link in an email. Be cautious about opening attachments, even if they come from someone you know, because if somebody sends you an attachment and you're not expecting it, make sure you contact them and ask them, hey, did you mean to send me this, before you click on it, because attachments can have embedded malicious code that you may not see anything happening when you open it, but it could be installing it behind the scenes, and it could be a keystroke logger, so people are collecting your keystrokes, so when you log into your bank, they have your login information, so you want to be careful with that. Like if you're not expecting an attachment, like I just said, call and ask them. Watch for spelling and grammar in emails. A lot of these phishing emails, there's a lot of grammatical errors, and the template that they use is a mess, so just be on the lookout for those. Let me see. Contact your bank and credit card company through a trusted website. So you want to make sure down at the bottom where it says look for the HTTPS, that means that that site is secured with a certificate. So any communication that you do through that site is encrypted. So if you have to go to your bank and log in, it is encrypted, so no one will be able to capture that information if they're monitoring your transaction over the internet. Here are some resources that we have available to you. its.fsu.edu/ISPO, and that's our site for the Information Security Privacy Office. And on that site, we have some training slides. We have some training that's available to you. We also have that fish tank where you can go and look at the emails to see if you received one similar to that, to know if it's legitimate or not. And then here's some phishing sites that you can go and look at and learn about it, and the phone scams at the Federal Trade Commission, and then FBI.gov constantly updates the scams that are going around. Well, right now in the time we're in, there's been a COVID phone call scam that they're calling you and telling you, I think it's something to do with you need to go get tested and you need to pay us first before you get tested. No one's going to call you about going to get a COVID test unless it's your supervisor or somebody at work that you know. Next slide. ITS has a lot of other resources available. There's free software. We have Office 365 that you get as a student that you can download. There's the virtual lab that they have. So it's a virtual computer lab with specific software. LinkedIn Learning is another tool that's out there that people don't know about. You can log in with your FSU account to LinkedIn, and there's a whole bunch of learning tutorials that you can use, from 1-minute videos to full courses. So if you're interested in perhaps a computer certification, there's a computer certification course that you can use on there to learn about network security. If you're preparing to take a Network Plus exam, just a whole bunch of stuff. With student computing support on campus, so if you have a problem with your computer, you can go to them and they can help you fix it. Obviously, we have the Wi-Fi. There's the service desk that's available, help.fsu.edu, or I think 644-HELP is the phone number. If you're having problems with your computer, you can put in a help desk ticket. There's a tech list, tips and tricks on how to use technology. And we have a Twitter site at Florida State ITS. There's Twitter and Facebook. Or Instagram, where they're posting information every Tuesday. They post a tech tip on there. And a lot of times if there's urgent cybersecurity information that needs to go out, we get it to our communications team and they put it up on this Florida State ITS Twitter site. Here's my contact information. That's my office phone number, but if you call it, it'll forward to my cell phone. So I will get the call. There's my email address. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And we want to, I guess I didn't welcome you to FSU. We welcome you, and it is a great experience here, and there is a lot to do. And if you are, just on a side note, if you are interested in watching or perhaps participating in soccer, there is a amateur soccer club here in Tallahassee, and they play on the fields across from Madison Social there in College Town called Tallahassee SC. And there's a website, tlhsoccerclub.com. It's a small amateur team, and I think they're doing pretty good. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thank you to Philip. We're going to talk a little bit about safety in the U.S. Okay, Philip mentioned some of this, but I only want to reiterate it because we have had international students, a couple of them, lose thousands of dollars. Like Philip said, if you get a phone call from anybody saying,
What was that for?
From anybody saying that they are law enforcement, or if there has been an accident and your social security number or driver's license was associated with it, and if you don't pay a certain amount of money by a certain time, your immigration status will be compromised, don't believe them. Our government agencies do not contact by phone like that. They do not ask for money, but you are a little more vulnerable because when you're in the US, you're trying to comply with all the laws and regulations. And so unfortunately, it's not too difficult for someone to convince you that you are really you're in danger of losing your status or being deported. So find a friend, come to the CGE, call the police department, but it's okay to hang up on those calls. Don't go buy gift cards and then give the numbers over the phone to somebody. Don't transfer money out of your bank account using an excuse when the bank teller asks you, why are you doing this? Don't give a fake reason. Don't be the victim of one of these scams. And like I said, check with a friend, hang up, do anything you need to do to just verify, because if anybody is threatening you, it is probably a scam. You'll have these slides later, so there are websites you can look at for more information. Sorry, I'm trying to get that to change. Okay, there. The FSU Police Department is right on campus, and it's a very easy number, 644-1234. They offer training and resources for students. You can see some of the different options they offer on the slide. And while you're, those of you who are in your home countries or before you start classes, take time to look at some of these different websites and familiarize yourself with the services that are offered. FSU Guardian is something you can sign up for so that if you do have a medical condition and you wanted law enforcement to know if anything were happening to you, you can sign up and register there. Hurricane preparation. Not only do we have to deal with the pandemic, but here in North Florida and well throughout Florida, we have to deal with occasional hurricanes that have shut down the campus. So this is the time of year when it's good to know what to do. Fortunately, with hurricanes, we do have some warnings. So we know if they're likely to come this way, but it helps to have some things at your apartment before it becomes an emergency, because everybody rushes out to the stores and starts buying up water and things like that. But this slide has a list of things that you would want to have at home just in case. Student contact. We are a campus of over 40,000 people. I realize that some of our 40,000 plus will be virtual this year, but it's important to know that because we are a community, there is a student code of conduct, and there are consequences if you don't respect other students, if you don't respect just the laws and the expectations. So some resources to know are like Know More. That gives more information about what's considered sexual misconduct. Any incident, or if you feel uncomfortable in the way you've been treated, you can go to report.fsu.edu to give information. You can also go online and look up the FSU Student Code of Conduct if you want to find out more information. It's always good to know that these things exist, and like I said, it's for our community. Important to remember, victims are not blamed. It is important to report and get help. We have a victim advocate office that not only if you're a victim of sexual misconduct or something like that, our students who were the victims of the phone scams and lost money were able to go to the victims advocate for help and for resources. The University Counseling Center, they can do telehealth, which they can only do if you're in Florida because of legal reasons, but they do have a lot of resources on their website. And when you are here, they have different groups. They even have things like dissertation support groups. So those of you who are doctoral students, if you get to the end of your program and you just need a group to help you get through, they have that at the Counseling Center. It's a walk-in kind of service. They're going to be doing it virtually, but if you're in Tallahassee and you want to see someone at the Counseling Center, you can actually go there and then they'll set you up in a Zoom meeting with a counselor. University Health Services, we have a big, almost full service health facility on campus. So you can look at their website and get an idea of everything they offer. Within Tallahassee, there's Refuge House for domestic violence, and there's Legal Services of North Florida that will take some cases free of charge. We can refer students to resources, but we are not counselors, and things that you tell us are not necessarily confidential. Okay, COVID-related information. I'm sure you're hearing these things in your own countries, but FSU is expecting everybody on campus to be wearing masks in Leon County, here in Tallahassee. Any public spaces, you should have masks on. Obviously, social distancing, limiting time, avoiding crowds. There's going to be a lot of new rules on campus, and we're hoping for the best. We'll see how things go. Emergency contact information. Our front desk phone is in operation, the 644-1702. And at that number, there's a recorded message after hours that would give a cell phone number that you could call if by any chance you're coming into the country and the immigration officer is trying to verify something and they want to call the school, they can get the number to call even after hours if you listen to the message and get the number at the end of the message. Before we go to healthcare, I want to break it up a little bit and let's do a poll because more people have come in since we had the initial breakout rooms. We know that the technology doesn't work for all of you, but there is now should be a poll on your screen, and we have just a few questions. If you can go ahead and answer the poll, and then we'll find out of those of you attending today, what degree level, have you studied in the US before, and do you expect to be in Tallahassee in the fall or not? I'll give you a couple of minutes to respond and see what we get. And if it doesn't work for you, we understand from our attempt to do this last week, we realized that for some people it just didn't work. But we'll let it go until we have almost everybody. Yeah, some people don't seem to be able to submit, but since 62 people have been able to do it, I'm not sure why it seems to work for some people and not for everybody. I'll give it a few more seconds and then we'll close it and share the answers. Okay, it looks like it slowed down. Now you should be able to see the results, and I'm quite impressed that a majority of you are actually working on a PhD. And it's you can tell because of the yes and the no's how many people, it's not the first time studying in the US, but a lot of you are students transferring to FSU from another university. To those of you where it's going to be the first time, if you're able to make it, we're happy for you. If you're waiting till spring, let's hope anticipation is good. And then planning to be in the US for the fall semester, you can see it's not even half of you. And some of you who did say yes, we know you're going to be staying in other states rather than coming to Florida. And then several of you do have family members who will be coming with you. And that's always nice. And if you have questions, go ahead and ask people in your department or ask us. But that gave you a chance to see a little bit about who you are with today. And thank you. I'm going to stop that. Oops. And then turn it over to Tanya now for one of the most important sessions of today's orientation.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself there. All right, so I'm Tanya Shad. I had done J1 advising for many years. There's an insurance requirement with the J1 status. So I'm kind of the insurance liaison, I won't say expert, but liaison at FSU's Center for Global Engagement. I also do some of the technology. If you did your I-20 application, I put that together. Feel free to send me your complaints or suggestions on that too. So I'll launch into my part here on healthcare in the US. For those of you who are here in Tallahassee, be sure to walk by at least the health center. It's a beautiful, huge, relatively new facility with lots and lots of services for you. I think as Kristen mentioned earlier, they do have telehealth available there for people who are in the state of Florida. And if you have the FSU health insurance, the insurance offered by FSU, that insurance company also has telehealth options where you can get advice online. So the Wellness Center is going to be your first stop for any non-emergency care at all. If possible, talk to them before you go to the hospital or go to urgent care. Just get some direction from them first, because it's always going to be your cheapest option, regardless of whether you're here on campus or in Missouri or Minnesota or whatever. You know, they can direct you either through the health insurance telehealth or through the health center telehealth. They also have a lot of health promotion activities. So if you're a smoker and you'd like to stop smoking, they have programs for that. If you find that you're eating terribly in the US, they have programs for that. A lot of those programs are likely to be online this time around. So just go to healthcenter.fsu.edu and you can find more information about those events. They also contain the health compliance office, and that's where your insurance questions, immunization questions, and questions about holds are going to go. That health compliance office is dedicated exclusively to insurance questions and immunization questions and issues. So that's where you're going to go for help with that. But if you have an emergency, you think you're going to die, do not go to the health center, dial 911. Everywhere in the US, regardless of whether you're in Florida or Colorado, you dial 911 for emergencies. Life-threatening emergencies, they'll get an ambulance to you. That ambulance will take you to the hospital and get you the help you need immediately. But truly life-threatening, if you are having trouble breathing, if you have chest pains, if you've passed out and you don't know why, those are types of things that you need to dial 911 for. If you're not sure, if you've had some symptoms of some type of illness or cold, you're not sure if it's COVID-19, you need to get tested, or you know, you're not sure that it's something life-threatening, urgent care is always a good option. If you're unable to use the telehealth, or if you just feel like you need to see a physician right away, urgent care is going to be your next cheapest option. Do not go to the hospital for any type of like, I'm just not feeling well, you know, it's been a couple of days and I'm a little congested, because one, that's going to be extremely expensive. And two, if you don't have the FSU insurance, it may not be covered at all. That visit may not be covered at all by your insurance. Some insurance plans exclude hospital visits for something that's a non-emergency. And I know in some countries, you go to the hospital for everything. You see your doctor for regular visits, you get blood tests, all of that at the hospital. That is not the case in the US. The hospital is really just meant for urgent emergency care, having a baby, you know, big things. And they want to try to keep only those people who need those high level services in the hospital. Everyone else goes to their personal physician or the urgent care facility. Try to also seek care during normal business hours, normal telehealth or clinic hours. Those hours tend to be a little bit longer with urgent care, so they tend to see people until 9 or 10 o'clock at night in a lot of places. Sometimes they have weekend hours as well. But if you wait until 3 in the morning and you've been having chest pains all day, your only option is going to be the hospital. And again, that's going to be very expensive. So ask questions early if you think, you know, this might be urgent, this might be an issue, but I'm not sure. These are some of the things I'm going to go over in this presentation, just kind of a little to-do list. So that's kind of the structure. With immunizations this time around, the health center is being very, very lenient. They understand that it may be difficult for you to get in touch with your doctor or your healthcare facility to get your immunization record or to have the immunization form signed by a physician. So if that's the case and you do not have those immunization records and cannot get them quickly, go ahead and contact health compliance at fsu.edu. Let them know, and they will remove that immunization hold temporarily. I emphasize temporarily because it will immediately go back on for spring semester. So in October, when you're trying to register for spring classes, you're going to have that immunization hold again. And they're going to be asking for that documentation again at that point. If we're still in the same state in October, again, contact health compliance. Let them know, and they will move that hold off until the next semester. Eventually, you will need to produce your immunization documentation. The only strict requirement is 2 MMR shots, measles, mumps, and rubella, given after your first birthday, and then the second one 28 days later. So those are the 2 requirements. If you think you've submitted that already and for some reason you still have an immunization hold, you may be like me who had their first MMR at 11 and a half months old and it didn't qualify. So you may need to contact the health center and see what you can do about either getting that hold put off until a later time when you can get that immunization or get other documentation. I do want to emphasize that if you have the FSU coverage, if you have the FSU insurance, it covers immunizations given at the health center at 100%. So if you don't have a missing MMR, you need a missing MMR, or you would like to get the hepatitis series that you waved off on earlier, you can get those at the health center, and they're covered at 100% at the health center. Right now, they may have very limited appointments for that, but if you're coming in the spring, you might have more of an opportunity to get those filled in at that point. It is very, very, very important to review your insurance policy. I know it's a very detailed document. It's hard to understand. There's a lot of jargon involved, but it's very, very important to know what it is you're purchasing. Each and every insurance policy is different. Even the FSU policy will differ from year to year. So next year's policy is usually going to be maybe not quite the same benefits. It will usually be a little bit more expensive. Rates do go up by at least 10% every year. We try to keep that under control by changing those benefits a little bit. So do review those policies every year as you're purchasing insurance. For the FSU policy, you're going to be able to find that brochure at uhcsr.com/FSU. That's for United Healthcare Student Resources. That's what that acronym stands for. When you're looking at that policy brochure, you want to look at, are you eligible for the plan? Are you taking enough courses to be eligible for it? If you are going to have to reduce your course load for some reason in the future, like you find out you're pregnant and you're going to be giving birth at some point during the semester, may have to drop enrollment, that is something to pay attention to with those plans as well. Another thing to keep in mind, especially if you're not in Florida, if you're in another US state, is your network. So if you're considering an FSU plan versus some other type of plan, you want to review the network for that insurance policy. We did hear from a student last week who was in orientation. She said, well, my doctor in whatever state she was in is not in network for her insurance policy, for the FSU insurance policy. And that's unfortunate. You can go to any doctor. Out of network doctors, though, are going to be more expensive. They just are going to be more expensive. So you can keep your doctor in that case, but just know that it will be a little bit more costly to use them. Just to explain what a network is, the US has no centralized government agency that is telling doctors and X-ray technicians and labs how much they can charge for services or for a particular service. Same with pharmaceuticals. So, Humira can cost $15,000 a month, and that's just how much it costs. There's no government agency telling that pharmaceutical company you can't charge that much. So the insurance companies in the US actually do step in, and they will tell pharmaceutical companies, we're only going to reimburse so much. You might want to consider that when you're pricing. They may or may not pay attention to it. But more importantly, they're going to go to every physician, every X-ray technician, every lab, every hospital, and they're going to go to those providers and say, hey, X-ray technician, would you accept $250 for this type of X-ray? And that X-ray technician is going to say, sure, I'll become part of your network. And they're going to go through that with every service that's possible. So that X-ray technician then becomes part of that network and will charge a predictable cost each and every time for those services. And that's good for the insurance company because they know what to expect. That's good for you because it's going to keep your premiums down for next year by controlling those costs. But certain physicians, like anesthesiologists, for instance, will never be in network pretty much with any insurance company. Their idea is if someone needs an anesthesiologist, they can't really choose their anesthesiologist. Doesn't make sense to be part of a network. So they can literally charge anything they want to charge. They can charge $500 today for a service. They can charge $1,000 tomorrow for a service. They can discount it or not, depending upon different circumstances. So that's why the insurance company is trying to get you into using those network providers whenever possible. And again, just to explain how this works is that everything you're paying in premiums goes into a big pot of money that then is distributed out for everyone's healthcare needs. So hopefully everyone is healthy, no one has severe issues with COVID-19 or with breaking a leg or something like that. And hopefully, 80% of the healthcare costs for this group of insured students is going to be very low, so that next year your premiums are great. They're going to be wonderful, much cheaper. But that's usually not the case, unfortunately. So the insurance company is able to keep 20% of what you pay into the policy. They use that for their buildings, their employees, their paper, their computers, et cetera, just to keep running. And then the other 80% goes out for your healthcare costs. And that is usually the case every year. The insurance company usually spends right around 80%. There's no extra funds. They don't make any extra money. They don't usually keep your money long enough to make interest off of it to have an extra fund available. So that's how those insurance companies pay their costs. So that's how that works. Usually at this point, I would ask, are there any questions? And feel free to put chat questions in as we go too. So as you're looking at those policy brochures, some things that may be unfamiliar are, like I mentioned, premium. Premium is the amount that you're paying for being part of the insured group of students. So it's kind of like a club. If you were to join an FSU club and they said, well, we collect $20 from everyone, and we use that $20 to pay for pizza and sodas and going on trips and things like that. So the more of you paying $20, the more stuff you're going to be able to pay for. So you pay that annually, and then that's paid out for everyone's healthcare costs, like we talked about. And again, that'll change each August, and that'll change each August with every insurance company. Then copays. Copays are great. Copays we like. We want to keep copays in our insurance policy as much as possible, because that is a flat fee. That's a predictable fee to you. So if you were to need to go to a neurologist or a dermatologist, you would pay $40, and that's it. That's all you would pay, unless you had some type of tests. Tests then also have a copay associated with them, but you know what those costs are because you've read your policy. So, that's what you want to pay attention to as you're going through. What are those copays? What's it going to look like if I need services? Then deductible is another type of way of managing costs. So if you end up in the hospital with a true emergency, you need to be admitted to the hospital, the deductible is going to be the first amount of that bill that you pay. You are responsible for it. And then there are some other costs that come after that to you, and the rest is paid by the insurance company. I'll go over an example of this, but deductible is usually those big costs. And this varies by insurance policy. So if you don't have the FSU plan, your policy may say everything falls under a deductible. So we won't pay anything until you get up to $500. So pay attention to that as you're going through those brochures. And then co-insurance is the next percentage that you will pay before your insurance company starts paying. Again, usually on those big bills. And these are ways that the insurance company keeps costs down. Again, if you had an insurance policy that covered everything at 100%, everything that could possibly happen to a student, it would literally cost $4,500 a month for you to be enrolled in that plan. We know this because we had a government agency, a foreign government agency, who was paying that much for their insurance plan. They don't anymore, by the way. Another way that insurance plans keep the costs down or keep your premium down is through exclusions. So most insurance plans have some pretty standard exclusions, even the FSU plan. So FSU plan, outside insurance plan, they're all going to exclude routine eye care. So I need contacts in order to see at all. I pay for those costs out of pocket. I just go to the doctor, I get my exam, I get my glasses, and I pay for it at that time. My health insurance does not cover it. Same with dental work. If you had a sore tooth, if you had a broken tooth, that is not covered by your health insurance. If you were in an accident, like fell over and broke your teeth, the emergency care for those teeth would be covered under your health insurance. So just kind of pain relieving, cleaning up any debris, that would be covered by your health insurance, but not like restoring your teeth, for instance. That you'd have to pay for out of pocket. There are policies available separately for dental and eye care. Usually those are just prepaid plans. So you're gonna pay the same amount no matter what, but you'll pay just a little bit a month rather than all at one time. So just something to consider when you're looking at those types of plans if you decide to. Car accidents, regardless of whether you're driving, someone else is driving, you get hit by a car while you're on a bike or walking across the road, any type of accident involving a car vehicle is going to be covered by the car insurance. So that is really important. If you, for a while there, we had every semester exchange students were being hit by cars as they crossed the road. If that were to happen to you, hopefully not, you would take a picture of the car owner's insurance card and be sure to contact their insurance company and say, hey, I need to follow up on these healthcare bills that resulted from this accident. So be sure that you are aware of that. Be sure that you get an accident report, report it to the police if it happens, and contact the insurance company. Same with work injuries. If you're a research assistant and you're in a lab and you get hurt, you're going to go to your supervisor, let them know, and then that injury is covered by the university's workers' comp insurance, not your health insurance. If you end up in the hospital with one of these things, you know, like you got in a car accident and you're there and you give them your health insurance card, those claims are going to be rejected by your insurance company. So that's why I'm mentioning it now. There are low-cost insurance policies out there that will cover international students and will meet the state requirements. They're very attractive to people because they think, well, it's the same type of thing, right? So I'm just going to pay less money for it. But like I said earlier, it all boils down to that percentage. So if the insurance company doesn't have enough to pay for the healthcare costs, they're going to find ways of getting out of paying those costs. So if you're choosing a low cost, low premium insurance plan, just keep in mind that there are costs that they are not going to pay. A big one is pre-existing conditions. So if you are in another state and you're seeing a physician regularly for a chronic condition, you want to get the health insurance from FSU because that will cover pre-existing conditions. A lot of other policies will not. Meaning that they will not cover any kinds of treatment, going to the doctor, et cetera, for continuing care for that chronic problem. Or if you ended up in the hospital and the hospital said, oh, it looks like you've been sick for 2 weeks, but your insurance just started yesterday, the health insurance, the low-cost health insurance that doesn't cover pre-existing conditions will likely not pay for those bills, unfortunately. So something very, very important to consider right now when it is possible that you can be asymptomatic for COVID-19 and may need care for something that's been ongoing for a little bit. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these cheaper plans will not cover hospital visits for non-emergencies. So if you go for a sore throat or a stomach condition and you're not admitted to the hospital or not, it's considered not an emergency, they will pay nothing on it. if you go to Phillips Soccer League at the intramural fields and you break your ankle playing soccer over there, and you have one of these low-cost insurance plans, they're not going to cover an injury like that. A lot of them will exclude all sports-related injuries at all. Injuries or illnesses while consuming alcohol, and this doesn't mean caused by alcohol. This can mean I had a drink of wine and then I broke my ankle. That may not be covered by a low-cost insurance plan. And injuries from riding a scooter, I mentioned because we've had at least 2 international students who've been in very, very bad scooter accidents, very, very expensive medical bills. And if you were in one of these lower cost insurance plans, those types of injuries are specifically excluded. So you may have a $100,000 medical bill from that would not be covered by those lower cost insurance plans. This is one real world example. Happened to my husband, happened to another student. It gets really hot in Florida, in Tallahassee in particular, and very humid. People forget to drink enough water and just pass out. So pass out in someone's yard, pass out here on campus, and then they're taken to the hospital in an ambulance. They're treated in the emergency room. The emergency room says, you really need to drink more water. So it's not an emergency, but yes, you should have gone to the hospital and make sure it wasn't an aneurysm or a heart problem or whatever. But with that, you would have a pretty substantial bill. So I separate these out because from experience, I've seen that each of these different services will bill you separately. So the ambulance bills you separately. The emergency room will bill you separately for calling the doctor who needs to see you, ordering the tests, arranging for your room, getting you gowns, those types of things, $500 minimum. Then the doctor coming in, the doctor is going to charge you for seeing you. Even if the doctor just sees you for 5 minutes or doesn't see you at all and has a nurse go in and say, here's what the issue is, you'll get a bill from that doctor. Having all the tests to make sure it's not a heart problem or a brain problem, those will be quite expensive, and you'll get a bill from a radiologist or a lab for those. So let's just say this example bill is around $4,000. That's pretty cheap. I just got an emergency room bill for nearly $8,000. So you would pay a $500 deductible from that amount. You would then pay $350 because they did not admit you to the hospital. You didn't stay in the hospital for a week. So that's a copay. And then you would pay 20% of the remaining cost. So you would pay about a third of that bill. If it were out of network, if you were in another state and you happen to be taken to a hospital that was not in network, you would pay more. The deductible is higher. You'd pay $1,000 for the deductible, the $350 copay, and then 30% of the remainder. So you'd actually be paying a little more than half of that bill if it were out of network. So this is just an example of why you want to avoid the hospital for something that's not an emergency. Definitely go if you pass out. Don't avoid the hospital if you have passed out from heat or whatever. But if you go for an upset stomach or a sore throat, you're definitely going to have at least a $1,000, $2,000 bill in the end. So just keep that in mind, and to let you know that insurance doesn't cover everything. It's a discount essentially. Some more real world examples from our international students. We had an undergraduate exchange student, so a young student, healthy student, who fell and broke her arm on the way to class. She was just walking from one class to the other, fell on the stairs and broke her arm. She needed continuing physical therapy for the whole time that she was here, and that bill was in excess of $20,000. Another undergraduate student, again, healthy as far as he knew, has insurance, but he went to the hospital with a severe stomach issue, stomach pain, and ended up having surgery, being admitted to the hospital, and his bill before insurance was $45,000. So, so if you're thinking, you know, why do I get insurance when I'm still going to have to pay something? This is why. These students did not have to pay $20,000 or $45,000 for their bills. The FSU insurance has a maximum out of pocket of $6,500, I think. So that's the maximum that they would have to pay. And that's why you want to look at your brochure. What's the maximum I would have to pay with the insurance? So when you're going to those sites and looking at the brochures, that's your first step. Your next step is to identify your network providers, regardless of where you are. So if you're in Missouri or New York or whatever, you're studying remotely, you're still going to go in and see who the network providers are for your area under your FSU insurance or whatever insurance you decide upon. So for the FSU plan, same website, uhcsr.com/FSU. And then you go in there, type your address, and you'll see, this is an example of what it looks like. You'll see you'll have to look at labs, physicians, hospitals, things that you may need while you're there. Some other common networks are MyFirstHealth and MultiPlan. But you would go to your insurance provider to figure out what their network is and then to look at that network. Do that now, though, so that if you did have an emergency situation, needed to be taken to the hospital and were conscious, you can say, oh, please go to this hospital instead of that hospital, and they'll try to abide by that. Or if you're going to a doctor, you can plan accordingly as well. Have a paper copy of your insurance card with you at all times, In a purse, pocket, backpack, whatever you have with you all the time, have a paper copy. Because what happens is when you get to the hospital in an emergency situation, someone usually will rifle through your things and try to find that insurance card or may ask for a copy of that insurance card. It's going to be difficult for them to, if not impossible, for them to pull that up on your phone or for you to find it on your phone when you're screaming in pain. Not something you want to do. So paper card with you, you can either print it out or you can have it mailed to you in most cases. And then also have your photo ID with you, again, at all times, but particularly when you're getting healthcare services. This is important because a doctor wants to be sure that the person giving them that insurance card is the same person they're seeing. So they want to make sure the names match up with who's being billed for this cost. If you have your insurance card with you, like I said, most of your bills are going to be going to that insurance company most of the time. I can tell you from experience that even when I have given my insurance card, sometimes the bills come to me by mistake. Something just didn't work like it should have. So keep those bills, always contact your insurance company and say, hey, why am I getting this bill? Are you paying this bill? Did you get it? Do I need to send it to you? Talk to the physician or the lab or whomever is sending you that bill and let them know, hey, I have insurance. This is my insurance policy. Please send it to my insurance. You may need to follow up on those things. Don't assume that it is done for you if you are getting bills in the mail. If your provider doesn't take the insurance, you didn't have the information with you, whatever, be sure that you're filing those claims in the claim period that's required. Usually it's 60 to 90 days. And that's, again, going to be in your brochure. So you want to look at that now. If you can't afford costs, usually you can negotiate that 80% down. So after you've paid your deductible and copay, usually providers will negotiate anything else. You can just say, I'm a poor student. I make no money. I can't afford a $6,000 bill. You know, can I pay you $500? And they may be okay with that. They've already gotten their money from the insurance company, and they may be willing to negotiate down to a very small percentage of what they billed you. So do ask if you have questions or if you need that kind of accommodation. And then you may just want to save a little bit of every month for unexpected healthcare costs, you know, for those co-pays or deductibles that you may have to pay at some point in time. And then, you know, if you don't, then you have a nice little travel fund for later. So what everyone wants to know right now, how to enroll for fall coverage if you haven't already, you're going to go to studentinsurance.fsu.edu before you register for classes. That is where you'll get information about both purchasing the FSU insurance, or if you already have an insurance policy that meets the Florida requirements, and that's important to know, you can go through a waiver process for that. So I know we have 3 or 4 Fulbrighters in the group who, if they're here in the US, will have an insurance policy through the State Department, and those insurance policies do meet the Florida requirements. So those students can go on and fill out the waiver for that. Don't fill out that waiver if you don't have insurance. You're going to need to provide the insurance company name, the policy number, and you're going to need to declare that all of the requirements are met. You can look at that website for the requirements before you fill out the waiver. Go to the International Student segment and it'll show you what those requirements are, and you can compare your policy brochure to those. And then students who are not in the US for fall at all, you don't plan to come, you can't come at all for fall, you may be eligible to have your insurance hold removed because you don't have F1 status yet, but we need you to fill out that travel enrollment form at istart.fsu.edu. I think Kristen maybe can type that in the chat for me, istart.fsu.edu, and then when you get there, go to F1 services, F1 student services, and there's a travel enrollment form there where you just fill out 3 questions and let us know what you're going to do for the fall, what your plan is for the fall. That can change, certainly, if you got a visa appointment tomorrow and you were able to get here, you know, by the first week of classes. Do keep in mind that you will have to have insurance at that time. You do need to go ahead and enroll in the insurance at that time, and health compliance can help you do that. But those who are definitely not going to be here, that is an option for you. We can get that hold removed based upon information in that form. Students located in the US, anywhere in the US, still have to enroll in some type of insurance that meets the Florida requirement. So I know that that doesn't quite make sense to a lot of people because they're thinking Florida requirement, but I'm in New York. But the requirement has to do with enrollment. So it has to do with you being an enrolled student at FSU, not you being in Florida. So that's why you have to comply with that requirement and why you have to go ahead and purchase it, purchase the insurance, or already have insurance in place that meets those requirements before you can enroll in classes. And the health center is responsible for verifying that. So that's why they're having you declare that to them or purchase that insurance there. So everyone, regardless of whether you have an assistantship or not, will need to enroll for your spring coverage before you can enroll for spring classes. And you'll have to have your insurance paid for by mid-October in order to do that. So for those of you who are self-paying, you may want to go ahead and enroll in the insurance now and then make payments as you go up through mid-October. That's fine. That's not a problem. You don't have to pay for it all at once, but you do have to have it paid by the time spring enrollment opens up. And then if you have a graduate assistantship, you will enroll in the coverage, but don't pay it. So this is a question that came up a little bit earlier. You can go to the grad school's website for more information. They're the ones who administer this subsidy that you get as a graduate assistant. So if you're a graduate student with an assistantship, you will right now, today, after the session, go and enroll in the FSU insurance. It says purchase, but you're just enrolling in the coverage. Then you will get an email from, I think it's Student Business Services. They will email you and say, hey, do you want the subsidy for insurance? And of course you will say, yes, I'd like the insurance. There's an opt-in button for the insurance subsidy. It only applies to the FSU policy though. So if you have some other type of policy, you have to pay for that completely on your own. So look for that email. And then in October, the subsidy will be applied and the remainder of the cost for insurance will be deducted from your paychecks. So just keep in mind your paychecks starting in October are going to be smaller because you're paying for insurance at that point. But that will remove that amount from your student record. You won't have that insurance amount on your record anymore. You probably will have it up through October though. So just ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist if you're a graduate assistant with an assistantship. This usually produces a lot of questions, so if you want to put those in chat, just feel free. I think we did have one in chat. Then if you have insurance through another provider, you have to fill out the waiver based upon that other insurance. So that's not us, that's on the student insurance website. Oh, it won't let me go to the next slide. Oh, there we go. So for the, I think 9 of you who have dependents, that's a tricky one, unfortunately. But FSU does have a dependent insurance option right now. And this year it is the same cost as the student insurance, which is saying a lot. I mean, in the past, dependent insurance has been about twice the cost of the student insurance policy. So it's quite costly. This year is pretty affordable as it's the same premium amount as the student coverage. Dependents can only be covered under that FSU insurance though, if the student is also covered. So you both have to have the FSU coverage in order to get that. Maternity costs, yes, excellent question. Yes, the FSU plan does definitely cover maternity costs, and it's a state requirement too. So if you have an outside policy through maybe your spouse's employer or whatever, that outside policy also has to cover maternity costs, but may not cover a pre-existing pregnancy. So like I said earlier, pre-existing conditions are excluded by a lot of plans. You want to pay attention to that, especially if you've recently found that you're pregnant, which sometimes happens. The FSU plan will cover pre-existing pregnancies and will cover pre-existing pregnancies for dependents as well. But you need to go ahead and enroll your dependent in that coverage before you learn that they're pregnant, ideally. I do want to mention that if you were in a situation where you decided, oh, it's too expensive to cover my spouse right now, I don't really want to do it right now. They're F2, so they don't absolutely require it. But you find out in November that they're pregnant. What happens in that case is you will pay for the entire premium for fall. So you'll pay for the entire premium for your dependent for fall, regardless of when you enrolled, but the insurance will only start paying for costs as of the date that you enrolled your dependent. So if your dependent went to the doctor and had a $250 bill to find that they were pregnant, that $250 bill is not going to be covered by that insurance that you've just paid for. So that's important to consider too. Healthcare.gov is another option for next year. So if you want to consider that for next year, the enrollment window is usually in early November. It's a very short window. So start looking for that in early November, and that'll be for coverage starting in January. The nice thing about healthcare.gov is that you can cover your dependents separately from yourself, and you may be able to find pretty reasonable coverage that again will cover pre-existing conditions and maternity and routine care and immunizations. So that's pretty nice. It's pretty comprehensive coverage, but again, you want to be careful about what you're choosing. Make sure that you know how much your deductible is and that type of thing when you're choosing it. And the other thing that you want to keep in mind is that accepting any government subsidies for that insurance may cause you some issues in the future. We're not sure. We can't say for sure. You'd want to talk to an immigration attorney about that. But it's one of those government benefits that may prevent you from getting a green card in the future. So again, immigration attorney is important before you make that decision. Update your local mailing address, very important for many, many reasons, but most importantly, if you were to have some kind of healthcare problem, a family member from home was trying to get in touch with you and couldn't and hasn't been able to get in touch with you for weeks, the FSU police will look in your student record to try to find you. So they need an address in there. We also need an address in there so we can validate your government immigration record for people who are in the US. If you're outside the US, you can wait on that. You can just put in your home address as your address in your home country. But once you're here, please, please, please do the mailing address. And I think this is my last slide. If you happen to be living on campus, students living on campus do have to be tested for COVID-19. They don't have to have their results back before they move in, but do have to be tested. So that's part of your housing agreement. Be sure that you schedule an appointment at the Civic Center at least 24 hours in advance, and bring a photo ID with you. So when you arrive there, they'll do the testing and you should get it back pretty quickly thereafter, but don't go without an appointment. There are some other free testing sites in the community. Most of those require advanced registration as well. There's a website here where you can find out more information about those sites. Not all of them are free. There's one that's quite expensive actually. And then everyone who's traveled from outside of the US must self-quarantine for 14 days prior to coming to campus. I think Jared's going to talk about this a little bit later, but that may impact your first day attendance. So be aware of that. Talk to your instructors to prevent being dropped from classes if you're not able to go because of the quarantine. Just some things to keep in mind.
We do have a few questions I've collected.
I figured.
So the first one is if they're attending FSU remotely for the fall semester and the insurance hold has been removed from their account, but it still says that it's due, is that something they have to contact UHS about in terms of removing that payment due or owed for the fall semester?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'll try to dissect the question as best as I can. So if you have enrolled in the coverage already and have a charge on your account, you shouldn't have a charge on your account unless you enroll yourself in coverage. But then you've found, oh, I can't get to the US, I'm not going to be in the US in the fall, and you want to get that removed, you can send email to that healthcompliance@fsu.edu. There's a form that you can fill out to say, I'm definitely not going to be in the US, and you can get that charge removed from your account.
Okay.
I think that was the answer to that question. If not, go ahead and chat again on that one.
And then for registration holds again, if they're taking online classes for the semester, how do they get rid of the insurance hold if it's still on their account? Is that something, again, do they email UHS about that?
So if you're studying remotely from your home country, this does not apply to people who are inside the US, but if you're studying remotely from your home country, fill out that travel enrollment form for us in istart.fsu.edu, and we will send a list after the session. We'll send a list to the health center of those who have indicated that they are not going to be in the US for the fall semester at all. And we'll work with the health center to get those holds removed for those students. So immediately after the session, if you've not already done that, go ahead and do that. If you're here in the US though, you have to have insurance.
And then in terms of confirmation emails from UHS, are you familiar with if students should receive them if they've submitted immunization records or anything, or does UHS just remove the holds without any kind of confirmation?
Right, just the holds are removed. So that's how you would know that it was accepted.
And then in terms of insurance cards, are those sent to students as soon as they're enrolled through email or mail?
They can ask that the card be mailed to them. And then the card would go to the mailing address in their student record. So they won't be automatically mailed. You'll have to ask for it, or you'll have to print it out on your own.
Okay. And if they have a TA or RA position in the spring semester, still wanting some clarification in terms of application for the subsidy and when do they apply for the subsidy? Is it now, immediately now, or is that something in the future that their programs will assist with?
Right. So grad school manages that. It's really important to go to their website and look at that information there. It's very, very detailed. It'll give you every possible scenario. But the way that it works is you enroll in the insurance right now. Then I think it's August 27th was on that slide. That's when you'll get the email saying, do you want to opt into that subsidy? And that's when you'll say yes. And in October, everything is applied to your account.
Okay.
So don't pay anything right now. Wait until October.
And then just a Fulbright student asking a question about need for insurance, or if Fulbright covers that insurance.
Right. So this is relatively new. In the past couple of years, the state requirements for insurance have changed, and the Fulbright policy has changed. So the Fulbright insurance through the State Department does now meet the Florida requirements. So as long as you have the insurance policy name and number, you can go ahead and complete the waiver form.
I would say if anyone has any other questions, because I'm still getting some, just so that we can continue on with the presentation, go ahead and I'll collect those questions and Tanya will answer them, or you can email or ask her in the Q&A as well following orientation, since we do need to move on and some are more specific than others.
Okay. All right, everyone. I'm Jared. You all have been looking at my picture for the last couple of minutes while Tanya's been answering questions. I am going to be talking to you all today about FSU academic resources and success. Now, I saw in the poll that about almost half of you already have familiarity with U.S. academic practices and things of that nature, but so it'll be review for some of you, but there's a lot of good information in here as well that is specific to Florida State University. And the first thing that we'll get into here is registration. Now, registration will be opening Monday, and you will need to register between Monday and Friday of next week. So what that means is you just need to sign up for one course between Monday and Friday of next week. If just one, you only need one on your schedule. If you don't get one on there by Friday, the late registration fee will kick in, and that runs from August 24th to August 27th. So just definitely make sure you get one course added in the next week. Then during the drop add period, which begins Saturday, the 22nd, then you can add and change and remove the courses on your schedule however you want to. So again, I'll just say it one more time. Make sure you get one class on your schedule by the end of next week. You must attend the first meeting of each class, or you may lose your place in that class. This is important, especially for those of you who might be quarantining right now and are enrolled in a face-to-face course. Let your professor know immediately, as soon as you can, that you are quarantining, and see what measures are made. If it is a online or remote course, check your syllabus at the beginning of the semester, and there should be information on how attendance will occur with that class. So check with your professor on that as well. We don't know exactly how every course will be handled in that regard. So keep going here. Oh, okay. So tuition and fees. You'll pay your you'll pay your fee via wire transfer online at the University's Center A 1500. The website's there for the wire transfers. If you're on a graduate assistant payment plan, if for whatever reason you can't pay the full sum up front, Student Business Services does have installment plans that will allow you to make scheduled payments throughout the semester. For those of you who are Fulbright or SOCM or getting funding from some of the other foreign government scholarship programs, the agency billing is due on August 28th. So how that works is you'll completely enroll in your full schedule, and make sure you have everything on your schedule correct by the end of the drop add period, which is the 27th. And then the next day, you'll complete the agency billing form and you'll submit it and the scholarship letter verifying the details of the agency on the billing, and you'll send that over to Student Business Services. If you have any questions about that, definitely reach out to your advisor. For Fulbright's, Tanya would be the one to contact about that. And the regular payment deadline for tuition is Friday, September 4th. Okay, some additional considerations about tuitions and fees. The Student Business Services offices will no longer accept cash as a payment option for students or other account holders. So if cash is the way you were planning on paying, we do have contact information for the people over in that office of who to contact in case that applies to you. So you would reach out to us and we can get you that contact information over there. Be aware that payment by electronic check does not carry additional service fees. And if you're not familiar with where Student Business Services is, it's actually in the stadium behind me. That's where University Center A is, and that's where the Business Services office is. There's also going to be a drop box that's located between there's 4 towers that go around this stadium at each corner. A1 and A2. In between those 2 towers is where they're going to have a drop box located, and this is going to be to try to minimize in-person contact with the offices. So there will actually be a drop box there as well, for those of you who are on campus. Okay, in terms of classroom culture in the United States, sizes of classrooms can vary anywhere between 10 students. That would probably be more likely in the graduate departments, up to 200. That would be more likely undergraduate classes. The syllabus, as I mentioned before, you'll get that at the beginning of the semester for each of your classes. In terms of how the course is set up, the schedule, the test dates, things of that nature, that will all be listed in the syllabus. And most of your general questions about how the course is structured will be in that syllabus. A thing to note about teaching styles in the U.S., it's a very student-centered learning style, meaning that professors are trying to give you the opportunity to interact with both your classmates and in the class in general. So they really value opinions and giving your perspective on how it relates to that course. Make sure you voice your needs with your professors. FSU professors are very open about making sure that you have what you need to succeed here. And the other thing that's pretty common about classroom culture in the U.S. is that presentation, participation, group work, these are all very common things. They want you to speak up. They want you to present on things that you study and research while you're here. In terms of religious holiday observances, now we at FSU, we understand that, throughout the semester you may have your religious holiday. We will grant you your religious holiday observance. Just make sure that you're letting your professors know. So it's on you to make sure they know at least 2 weeks in advance that you have an upcoming religious holiday. But I would say go ahead and let them know at the beginning of the semester. That way you don't run into any trouble later. So if you know that there's a religious holiday coming up between now and the end of November for you, be sure once you have your schedule set to let that professor know that you'll be out for that time, and they will grant it to you. Okay, so academic integrity and plagiarism. These are very serious violations here in the US, and violations of the FSU academic honor policy include cheating, plagiarism, unauthorized group work. So if you were, so if there's an assignment and the professor finds out that you're working with other students and you are not allowed to do that, that would be considered unauthorized group work. Fabrication or falsification, misrepresentation of data, research. So basically lying about the researches you're finding. Multiple submissions. So what that means is, let's say you write a really good paper for one course, you cannot then submit that paper in another course for another paper that you're writing. So make sure you're not doing that. Everything has to be original. You can plagiarize yourself when you are writing papers. Abuses of academic materials, complicity in academic dishonesty, or attempting to commit any of these. And it's not just limited to that. So just be careful that you're doing what you need to be doing on your part. Okay. In terms of getting more specifically into plagiarism, defined at FSU as presenting the work of another as one's own without proper acknowledgement of the source. So this could be using another work from print, web, or other sources without acknowledging the source, quoting from a source without citation, or using facts, figures, graphs, charts, or information without acknowledgement of the source. So be very careful about how you're using your citations. There's the two major formats that are used are the MLA format and the APA format. Make sure you're using the one that your professor wants. That's something that usually will come up in the syllabus as well. They'll tell you how they want things cited. So be aware of that as well. Okay, and as you're writing, make sure you're citing as you write. So when you're pulling from sources, make sure that you are, giving credit to where you pulled that material from. Again, the APA and the MLA formats are the most common ones used. Professors do utilize online platforms to verify original content, students' work. So when you turn something in, there's this program called Turnitin, and this will automatically screen your work to see how original it is. And there will actually be a number of how original it is. So be aware of that. They're going to be looking at your work from that perspective as well. And violations of the FSU academic honor policy, especially plagiarism, can have very serious consequences, both academically and on your visa status. So be very aware of this. In terms of resources to help you with these dynamics, the Strozier Library, they are actually reopening their physical locations starting on Monday. So right now they're sort of gearing back up for the semester as well. They have the Reading and Writing Center, which gives you individualized instruction in composition, reading through one-on-one tutoring, and small group workshops. You'll make an appointment using that website there, and the Reading and Writing Centers will be opening on the 31st of August. There's also tutoring that we have available at FSU, and this is conducted via Zoom. So no in-person tutoring in subjects such as math, physics, and chemistry. And that website, that link is there for you as well as to sign up. Some additional resources, the Academic Center for Excellence, that's related to undergraduates. That's not particularly related to you all. Keep in mind that the librarians in the Strozier, in the various libraries on campus, are very helpful. If you are having trouble accessing a document that you need for your research, an academic document from maybe a research article, publication, so let's say you can't find it or you can't access it, be sure to reach out to those representatives in the library. They're very helpful, and they will help you access that article that you're having trouble finding, and they'll get that over to you. The Career Center. So one of the things I do here is that I actually work directly with the Career Center to come up with workshops, opportunities for you all, and just sort of let them know that we have international students that, and we need to try to meet their needs, and we try to work with them to get resources out to you all. It's a great Career Center that we have here at FSU. Their services are being conducted remotely as well at the moment. Some of the various things that they have are career advising, internships. They can provide you with information on internships. We have a program here called Intern FSU. Review writing, resumes, cover letters. They can review those things for you, give you advice on how to adjust them, how to make them really pop and shine when you are applying for jobs. Mock interviews. Very helpful. They'll actually record you doing a mock interview with them so that not only will they look at how you are answering questions, but they're also going to tell you about looking at your body language and nonverbal cues and things of that nature to help you nail that interview when the real one does come. And then we have Career Center fairs and events. Again, this has been slightly adjusted. Usually we have big in-person career fair events. These things obviously can't take place right now, so they're working on trying to get some new information out to you all in that regard. In terms of COVID-19 related information, so it's important to make sure you're wearing a mask on campus. If you don't have one, our understanding is that the buildings and departments will have masks available for you to use when you enter the building. Social distancing, CDC guidelines, all of those we are taking in effect. Keep in mind that there won't be any face-to-face classes after the Thanksgiving break from November 25th through 29th. Everything will be conducted remotely on campus in terms of classes afterwards. And Laura had already mentioned this, but the virtual FSU will be a great way for you to stay connected while you are all, largely studying remotely. A couple of other things that's worth mentioning is that from our understanding, you might need to go to campus if you set up a bank account with SunTrust here on campus. You may need to come to campus for that, and you may also need to come to campus to get your FSU card. So, and I think there was a question in the box somewhere. I believe somebody had a question. Oh, and another thing that came up is that swipe. You need to swipe into buildings on campus. So make sure you have your FSU card with you at all times. You never know which building is going to require you to use your actual FSU card to swipe into the building. So make sure you have your FSU card with you. So, and again, to enroll in classes without the financial penalty, you'll just want to make sure that you have a class on your schedule by next Friday. Welcome. Thank you all. Welcome.
Okay. Well, this is Betty Jensen, but my colleague Angelique is actually back with us from an appointment, and I believe she will take the first part. Angelique?
Hi everyone, my name is Angelique Stevens and I am one of the F1 advisors at the Center for Global Engagement. I am originally from France and I moved to the US 7 years ago. So I was actually a student at university here, so I can kind of relate to what you're going through, trying to transition to the US. Today we're going to go over a few rules for your F1 status. So for those of you who are staying abroad this fall semester, these rules will be really useful for the spring semester, spring 2021. And for those of you who are in the US because you were at another school before you were transferring, then these rules would apply for you. Okay, so let's get started. here is an overview of the staff in our office with whom you'll probably interact. Betty and I will be presenting this session. You just heard from Jared. So the three of us, Betty, Jared, and I, are the F1 advisors in our office currently, and we advise our students depending on the first letter of their last names. So you can see our advising range on that slide. You have all interacted, heard from Quinn O'Brien. He helped you get your first FSU I-20. Tanya Khalif would be the person you will interact with if you call our office or if you email cge@fsu.edu. And Kristen is our associate director, and you heard from her this morning. So in terms of our services for this fall semester, you can imagine things are a little bit different at the moment, but we're still here for you. So you're welcome to call our phone numbers, and you can leave a voicemail. We'll get back to you. If you call direct lines, if you call the general office phone number that's listed under Tanya's name, then someone should be able to answer the phone. We are offering advising online via Zoom, and we're working on doing drop-in advising. So you could talk to us over Zoom between 2 and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. When we all go back to the office eventually, that would be you would come to the office between 2 and 4 p.m. on Fridays. But we're working on virtual advising via Zoom during those hours. What it means is during 2 and 4 p.m. you don't need an appointment. If those times don't work, then you can email your F1 advisor to secure an appointment at a different time. So what our office does, first, we list advising you on F1 regulations. We are trained on the F1 regulations. So on campus, we would be the office you go to when you have a question about how something influences your immigration status. So how does it work if you wanted to do an internship? How does it work if you wanted to enroll in less classes? But that's not all we do. That's not all the Center for Global Engagement does. Jared mentioned that we offer workshops. He was mentioning the Career Center, having workshops with them, collaborating with them. We're just trying to give you the tools you need to succeed at FSU. But we want to be the office that you feel you can go to when you have any kind of question. So it does not have to be immigration related. It could be, where do I go to take care of this thing? If you don't know where to go, you can reach out to your CGE advisor. And I always say, if I don't have the answer to a question, I will find out who does. It's never a bother, so really do feel free to reach out. We're not only immigration regulations, we're not only that office. So let's just go into some F1 basics, immigration status basics regarding enrollment. So all of your graduate students, if you were coming to the US from abroad this fall semester, this slide is only for fall, then you need to have at least 9 credit hours. And one of those classes, which would be 3 credits, one of those classes has to be in-person or hybrid. Hybrid is a mix of in-person meetings and having online class meetings too. So that is for people who are brand new F1s coming to the US this fall. If you are studying from abroad this fall remotely, then you're not an and you've never been in an F1 before, you're not an initial student. So I just wanted to clarify that. This is brand new F1 students who will be present in the US this fall. If you're an F1 student who has been in the US before, so for instance, maybe you went to another university and now you're at FSU, or maybe you were at FSU and you are going from a bachelor's to a master's, or a master's to a PhD at FSU, then you need to be in at least 9 credit hours. There's no requirement on the split between in-person, hybrid, or online, but 9 credit hours applies in both cases. That is what's considered full-time enrollment. We will talk a little bit about cases where you can request to be below this, but the general rule is at least 9 credit hours for fall and spring. So usual times after this crisis is over, what would be the rule usually? Usually the rule is for fall and spring, You must have at least 9 credit hours, and 6 of those have to be in person. The reason being, if you're an F1 student, you're expected to go to classes, mostly, but of course, coronavirus is making things a little bit different this fall. At one point, you're going to take preliminary exams if your degree has a thesis or dissertation component to it. And after you've passed that exam, you can enroll in thesis or dissertation hours. When you've reached 6 thesis hours or 24 dissertation hours, you could enroll in 3 credit hours, and that would be considered full-time at that stage. So this is when you're further along, not at the moment, but later that will apply. So one of the reasons you don't have to be at 9 credit hours could also be if this is your last semester. So during your last semester, you are not forced to enroll in 9 credit hours. You just enroll in whatever number of credits you need to finish. Usually, so this is usual circumstances, they cannot be all online. There has to be at least 1 in-person class. And if you're in your thesis or dissertation and you've been enrolling in 3 credit hours, you can drop down to 2 in your last semester. Now here's the thing though, if you are a research assistant or a teaching assistant and you get funding from an FSU department, they might ask you to always stay at 9 credit hours, or they might ask you to enroll in more than what is needed for your F status. So just be aware that the immigration minimums are not maximums. So if your academic department says, we need you to enroll in 9 credit hours, but you would be eligible to enroll in 3 because you've done 24 dissertation hours, if you want their funding, you enroll in 9. This is just a heads up that your department or a scholarship you have may require you to enroll in more. And if you have questions about this, when this comes up, email your CGE advisor and we can try to make sense of where the requirements are coming from. Okay, the other 2 possibilities of being below 9 credit hours. The first one will be if you are a brand new F1 student, you've never been schooled in the US, you could have an initial difficulty with the English language or the reading requirements in the class or the US teaching methods. By initial, we usually mean the first semester. Your first semester being in the US, this is a lot. You'd have to enroll in at least 6 credit hours, so it's not down to 0, but it's a lighter semester. So you want to definitely let your instructor know as soon as possible and let the CGE know if you think this is applicable to you. That can only happen once, the initial difficulty, which makes sense. You're only initial once. Unfortunately, if you have the minimum 9 credit hours and you're hoping to drop a class because you're not doing well in it, that does not work for your immigration status. You have to be at least 9 credit hours. If it's your final semester, of course, you can be in less than what is full-time. If it's your initial semester as an F1 in the US, then we can talk about academic difficulties. I'll talk about medical too. If you have a medical condition that prevents you from enrolling full-time, according to a medical doctor, doctor of osteopathy, or clinical psychologist, if they recommend that you drop down to 0 credits or just drop down to less than full-time, that's the third reason that you can be under 9 credit hours. If none of these apply to you, such as I'm not doing well in this class, you cannot drop below full-time. That is important to say. You can retake the class later. You would complete the semester, get the grade, and then recomplete it. You have to stay 9 credit hours. So if you're able to swap somehow, get another class, then great. But usually when you're not doing well in a class, it happens later in the semester. So you can't enroll in something new anymore, usually. You can talk to us for sure. If this is something of concern, having to drop a class, what are the options? You can talk to us. I just want you to know that there are specific reasons that F students are allowed to be under 9 credit hours, and not having satisfactory progress in the class is not one of them. So I want to prepare you for that. Now we're going to talk about international travel and what you need. A couple of things. Your passport is supposed to be valid at all times while you're in the United States. And when you go through the border, they're going to check your passport validity, and you want to make sure it's at least 6 months in the future. But for sure, it has to be valid while you're here. So what happens if you're in the US and you know international travel is not easy to go renew it back home? You can contact the consulate or the embassy of your home country. So if you're from Jamaica, be the Jamaican consulate or embassy in the US. You contact them to ask them what the procedure is to renew your passport, to extend your passport. So each country has a different procedure, but that's the way you would do it while you're inside the United States. When we talk about your visa, we talk about the sticker in your passport that says F1. So if you're staying home this fall, you don't have a visa yet, probably, you know, brand new student, hasn't applied yet. Once you get one, you can only get it at a US embassy or consulate abroad. There are no US consulates or embassies in the US. So you have to go abroad to get one. But the good news is your visa only needs to be valid when you're crossing the border to come to the US. Your visa is the only immigration document that can expire while you're in the United States. Your passport has to be valid. Your I-20 has to be valid. Your I-94 has to be valid. But your visa can expire while you're here as long as you're following all the rules, doing everything you're supposed to. So that is some good news. It can only be done abroad, but if you have one, it's expired and you're here, it can be okay. Sorry, went one too far. So the I-94, I just mentioned it. It's the record of you coming to the US. It's one of the 2 documents that say you're here legally because it says this person on this date came in as an F1 student, and they can stay for duration of status. They can stay in the US as long as they're following all the rules. You do need to keep your I-94 with you. It's usually electronic, but if you come by land or by sea, it will be a white card. But if you come by plane, which is why I say usually, if you come by plane, your I-94 will be online. Keep it, because again, it's one of the 2 documents that say you're here legally. You're here as an F1. Your I-20 would be the other. You're here as long as your I-20 is valid. So definitely keep it. It's very important. You will need your I-94 when you're applying for a driver's license, when you're applying to open a bank account, when you're applying for a social security number, you'll need those. And finally, before you leave the US, if you're traveling internationally, I don't recommend that at the moment, but later that will happen, I'm sure. You need to get a travel signature on your I-20 before you leave, or at least check with our office if you have one already. The travel signature is on page 2. So page 1, there is one signature that says your I-20 is valid and you signed it too. Page 2, the other side, is where the travel signature goes. So that is one thing you need to do before you leave the US. We're talking about employment at this point. On-campus employment, as in working for an FSU office, you know, academic department, or even just an office, it's pretty easy because as an F1, you're already allowed to do it. So to be an F1, you have to be in the US, right? But you're already allowed, like, to be in F status, you must have come to the US at least once and still be in valid status. Employment for F1s is always limited. So the main purpose of the F status is to study. So any employment that's related to it will be part-time and probably related to what you're studying. So I just want to prepare you for that, that employment as an F1 is not going to help support you while you're here. It's going to be additional. So on-campus employment, no more than 20 hours during fall and spring. That's a maximum while classes are in session. So it's not an average. While classes are in session, The max you can do is 20 hours a week, not, oh, 31 week, 10 the other. No, 20 is the max. When classes are not in session, for instance, the summer, you can go up to 40 hours per week. As long as summer is not your final semester, you can do that. You can work for several offices on campus, but the total number of hours has to be under 20. For off-campus work, most of you would go through curricular practical training if you have an internship. So if there's an internship off campus, you're going to enroll in an internship class and apply for CPT, curricular practical training authorization with our office. The work can be paid or unpaid. The 20-hour per week rule for fall and spring usually applies. You can be authorized to do more in the summer. To do off-campus work, you have to wait for at least 2 semesters of being an F1. So if this is your first semester of ever being an F1, you know, you're brand new, you have to wait until next school year to do it. But if you're a change of level or a CVIS transfer, you may have already done those 2 semesters that academic year somewhere else. So CPT is what most of you will apply for, but you have to get it before you start working. That is very important. Even if the work is unpaid, usually we would tell you, do not start working off campus until you have an I-20 from us that says you're authorized for CPT for these specific dates, this specific employer. It's very important. So you don't have negative influence on your status. So you get the job, what do you need? You'll need a social security number in order to be paid. If you're unpaid, you don't need an SSN. You'll need a US bank account if you're paid, so they can actually send you the money. If you work on campus, you will also have a Glacier account. It will help keep track of your employment and it will help you with taxes. Now, on-campus work authorization ends on the date of your graduation. And we will know when your graduation is because Student Business Services, the registrar, is going to tell us this person is graduating or has graduated already. Do not work on campus, so don't do any grading, any teaching after you are graduating. And I say that because the FSU departments, academic departments, sometimes are not aware of the F1 rules. So they could ask you to work a few days after graduation. Just tell them, nope, I'm graduating, so I cannot work on campus after this date because I'm an F1 international student. If you have a doubt about employment, talk to your CGE advisor. It is way easier to advise you before the employment opportunity happens than after. So if you get an offer, you can come to us and say, hey, I got this offer off campus. What do I do? We'll be happy to help you. No problem. So just reach out to us, basically. When you have a doubt, ask us. We're happy to help. And I'm gonna pass this on to my colleague, Betty. Thank you all for listening.
Yes, well, I'm back with you. I'm Betty Jensen again, one of the 3 immigration advisors, well, 4 actually. And I will continue with the presentation on the basics of F1 status. Okay, Angelique, I need to have control. I need control of the screen, or the next slide. Kevin, no, okay. I'm not, okay, now. Okay, finally. Okay, so we begin with talking a little bit about your SEVAS record. And a lot of you may not have actually paid your SEVAS fee yet, and you may not really know what this acronym stands for. So I always like to remind or let you know what that SEVA's acronym stands for. And basically, it's the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, okay, which is the website system that the Department of Homeland Security uses to maintain information regarding your immigration status for F students and J visa students as well. So that's an electronic record, and we all have been authorized to go into that immigration website as your immigration advisors. You have a SEVA's ID, or when you get your I-20, if you haven't yet, many of you have not, you will have a SEVA's number, which you will need to go in and pay your SEVA's fee. And all this information is on your I-20, very important document, your I-20, that allows you to get your F1 visa once you go to the US Embassy in your country. The I-20 also has the program end date. You know, for some of you, master's students, maybe 1 year, usually it's 1 year. Some masters are 2 years. And doctoral, maybe 5 years. So that's given an estimate. Okay, you F1 students and we F1 immigration advisors have responsibilities. Okay, so let's talk about your responsibilities so that we can all be maintaining F1 status. Okay, you need to let us know, or actually that's not true anymore. We've gone up in technology, and you don't have to really tell us when you move, but every 10 days of your move, you need to go into your account, MyFSU, my.fsu.edu, also known as Student Central, and go ahead and update that address. That system will feed into our system, our case management database called Synapses, which then it will transfer it to SEVA's, and that's how we keep up. You are more than welcome to email your advisor to let him or her know that you have changed your address. And sometimes it's good because a lot of times the system doesn't quite face correctly for what reason, or the system is down and etc. So do that if you want to. It's a good idea. Okay, your responsibility is, if, as Angelique said earlier, extremely important that if you are going to step off campus for an internship, it is extremely important that you get in touch with us because we have to approve that. Okay, a lot of times there's a lot of questions. Oh, it's just 1 day. Oh, it's just 3 weeks. So it's just, you need to let us know at the minute that you're going off campus work, off campus internship, off campus training. Okay, if you're studying abroad because you've already started collecting your dissertation and you need to continue it from abroad, notify us. You will still be all fine. Let us know that you live in the university so that we can code and note your system and your I-20 on your SEVA's record correctly. Angelique mentioned the reasons why we could authorize a reduced course load. So you will actually come and send us an email, come to the office, hopefully this spring, and let us know. You cannot drop on your own. You have to let us know. It is very sad for us that, you know, if you don't come to us and you drop a class, then we find out 4 or 5 weeks later, you actually were at a status because you violated that F1 rule of being full-time. And then we hate to have to terminate your record, but we have pledged that to the Department of Homeland Security that we are going to abide by the rules. Okay, so please be our best friend. Keep in touch with us. we will steer you the right way, believe me. We have all kinds of forms on our website that are going to have to be signed, authorized by us. So again, keep in touch with us. Okay, now, what are our responsibilities? As you might already realize, we have a lot of responsibilities and some that we like to be there for you, but we will update. The SEVA system will make sure we will be responsible to make sure that if you change your address, that it is going to go to SEVA's. We're going to verify your full-time enrollment and compliance with online class limits, now with COVID exceptions. At the end of 3-4 weeks, we are required to make sure we go into SEVA's and make sure that we tell the Department of Homeland Security that you are all fine, that you've arrived, that you registered, and that you're with us. Okay, as I said earlier, we hate to do that, but again, we also may have to terminate your record if there are violations of your F1 status. And unauthorized employment is one that happens, and sometimes it's not that you meant to violate the rule, but it is that you thought that the process ended when your professor told you, yes, you can do this internship, and then she or he is not necessarily aware of what the next step is because you're an international student. When you step off campus, you need to come and let us know. Okay, so it is sad for us to have to terminate the record of a student who really didn't intend to violate the rule. Okay, we do all the processing. In fact, we process almost 2/3 of a day. We're processing I-20 extensions, CPTs, OPTs, transfers, so we are processing the majority of our day. So we look forward to even seeing our students during office hours via Zoom now, but yeah, we are pretty much busy processing. Sometimes we tell you, we need 2 weeks to process your OPT. If we're really busy, if we're not, it takes us a little less than 2 weeks. So we all have to understand that we have more than 500 students, each advisor, and it does take a little while, but we try to really be on top of things, all 4 of us. We issue I-20s for your F2 dependents. If in the middle of the year you want to bring your wife and your children from abroad, we will be happy to help you with that. You change your major and you need to let us know. Sometimes the departments forget to send us the form that advises us you have changed your major. And then you have an I-20 going around that has the wrong major. So again, I think by now you're getting an idea of the importance of being in touch with your advisor, okay? We also shorten the program end date upon graduation because a lot of times you finish a little bit earlier, and depending on what the next step is, you apply for OPT. We would have to shorten it anyway. You will be learning about OPT a little bit later, perhaps, not at this point. Okay, so we've kind of covered the immigration regulations. So now we're going to have fun. We're going to start a Zoom poll, and a lot of the answers have already been given by both of us, but do not hesitate to go ahead and answer. We want you to answer these questions, and at the end I'm going to share the results. Don't worry, this is not a test. We're not going to grade you. I think it's better to make a mistake now and then correct it than not to answer at all. So if you have access, hopefully you're not having any difficulty, go ahead and begin the poll, please. Begin answering, providing the answer to your questions over here. Are you seeing the questions? Good, good, good. I'm beginning to see them. Okay, I'm beginning to see the answers, that is. Good, good, good. Okay. 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 What must you do with I-20 before traveling outside? Okay. We have about 80 plus of you. So we would love for all of you to give it a try and answer. Good, good. Moving up in the number. Good, good. Okay, we have up to 53 people responding. So 40, yeah, a little more. So just a few more minutes. I see most of you by far are getting the right answers, so that's encouraging. However, if not quite, that's okay too. Okay. Okay, so it appears that perhaps it's time to close the poll. And we see the results. But in a minute, I'm going to cover each one with just a little bit of more explanation. So I'm going to stop the poll right now, and we're going to begin. Okay. Which of the following documents can expire while you are in the US without causing any violation of F1 immigration regulations? Okay, I remember Angelique mentioned that already. Remember guys, the F1 visa is just a stamp, an entry stamp on your passport. So once you enter the States, that's it. Your I-20 is really the one that continues to give you your F1 status. Yes, the visa is important because without a visa, you couldn't enter the States, but without an I-20, you could not get a visa. So think about that. So the visa is only a travel document. And a lot of students think of the F1 visa being my visa is going to be to be revoked and all that. It is your status, your I-20, that is more important, okay? So that is important to know. What must you do with your I-20 before traveling outside the US? Okay, I think most of you got this one. You need to come to the Center for Global Engagement beginning in the spring. I think this fall we'll be doing it remotely, or you can email us and we will do an electronic I-20 with travel signature and we'll mail that to you electronically. DHS has, SEVP has actually authorized electronic I-20s, which has been a blessing, believe us. We don't have to ship things to you, you know, where you are. So you must have a travel signature on the second page of your I-20, less than a year old, on the day you re-enter the US. Okay, it's a little different later. When you're on OPT, that takes us to only 6 months, but that's to be learned maybe a little later. What is the maximum number of hours per week that you can work on campus during the fall and spring semesters? We mentioned, unless it's during the summer, fall and spring, 20 hours is the maximum. Not 21, or as Angelique said, an average of 1 week is 9, the other week is 21. No, okay? 20 hours is the maximum for on-campus work when classes are in session, okay? Can you work off campus without prior approval? No, 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 no. Again, there's new students who have not yet been in the US, most of you in F1 status will not necessarily need a travel signature because you're entering for the very first time, okay? So, working without permission is a serious violation of F1 regulations. And you know what can happen? We mentioned that earlier, the thing we hate to do. Okay, you must receive CPT approval before starting. CPT is also known as an internship. That is just, CPT is the immigration term. You might get to know it as internship. Okay, how long must you be enrolled in classes full-time before you might be eligible for CPT or OPT? 2 semesters, okay? Fall and spring. Summer doesn't quite count because it's not considered a full semester. So 2 semesters, okay? So the issue for the ones of you who are now beginning to study at FSU, but not quite on F1 status, that changes things a little bit because we can't count this fall semester as one of those 2 semesters for beginning CPT, yeah? Or if in a short master's program, OPT. So reach your advisor if you have more questions about this, tell us during our breakout room at the end. Okay, you will not be able to apply for off-campus work starting before you have completed 2 semesters. They may have been completed at a previous school though, if you're transfer students, so that will count, okay? Okay, now after moving to a new apartment, how many days do you have to update your address? I believe both of us mentioned that, right? 10 days, 10 days, okay? And how do you change your address? By going to Student Central, that's your my.fsu.edu within 10 days. And again, you're welcome to email us, alerting us that you have done that. That would not be a bad thing, okay? One thing I wanted to mention is that your passport, even though, you know, it might, we tell you that it is valid and it could expire perhaps if you're employed at FSU, you must have a valid passport, okay? I just got one of my colleagues mentioning that so that we can't, okay? So an expired passport would impact one's ability to work on campus, okay? Gotcha. So I think at this point, we are going to give it back to amazing Laura.
All right, thanks everyone. I know it's been a lot of information that you have had to listen to, but hopefully it's all valuable. We think that, you know, it's just what you need to kickstart your experience here at FSU. I will mention we do have an orientation evaluation. We would very much appreciate if you took some time in the Q&A breakout rooms to fill out your experience. Just so that we can further, you know, provide better and more relevant information for other students that are going to be doing orientation after you. I will also want to mention we have a virtual CGE escape room. If any of you have known the trend of an escape room, it's a fun, sort of code breaking experience. I've transitioned one to a virtual one experience for you where you can learn more about FSU's campus and resources through a fun and engaging escape room. So definitely check that out as well. Those links will be sent to you in your breakout rooms for Q&A.